Hello everyone, Will again here from the St. Johns County Public Library System, and we're back again for homeschool history. Many of you probably don't know, but when I started studying history, I originally started studying British history, specifically post-Roman into medieval period. And a recent video game inspired me to reconnect with that, so I thought I'd share one of my favorite time periods with y'all. So let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about Anglo-Saxon England, and that's about the period between 410 AD and 1066 AD. So 1066 is one of those dates in British history, much in the same way that the American Revolution is for us. It's a notorious date. This 1066 is the Norman invasion by William the Conqueror. Um, so if once you get a little bit older, you'll probably see this date again and again if you study Britain. But we're before that. So who were the Anglo-Saxons? Britain has this history of different peoples coming in to live on the island. Some of them were invaders, but some came with the intent to stay. You have what you could call traditional groups, ones who are generally accepted to have been native to the area. So your Britons, different Celtic peoples, Welsh, all these types of peoples are understood to be the original um, residents of the islands, um, but they're not the only ones. So one of the earliest peoples that we know of that that came to the islands were actually the Romans. The Romans occupied England for about 500 years. So for those of you who look at the Roman Empire, it was a vast empire, and yeah, Britain was on its most northern stretches of its empire. As the Roman Empire uh, grew a little bit too big for its britches, it struggled to maintain any sort of control over some of its areas with different political um, conflicts and issues that were happening within Rome itself. So in 410 AD, Rome actually left Britain for good. Now, while they're in Britain, they did things like build roads, they built forts. Some of the towns today all have that Roman imprint still. Some of the major roads that are used in England were originally built by the Romans. If you go and visit, there's still some of the ruins from the forts. Not a whole lot, but even in London, there's a church that its crypt, it still has the original Roman tile in a section of the area. So there's a lot of stuff that you can see even today that are left over by the Romans, not just in the naming of some of the towns. So when they left, they left some infrastructure, but they left a power vacuum. So no one's really in control anymore. Um, and the Britons thought they'd get a reprieve from being the conquered people, but they weren't left to their own devices very long. You have different Germanic tribes that make their way over to Britain, and these are going to be the Anglo-Saxons. The big ones are the Angles, Saxons, and the Jutes. These are peoples from areas that's modern day Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands. They named the land Angleland, which is now how we get the name England. So the Anglo-Saxon peoples have been in Britain for a long time. Later on, you'll get some Viking incursions, and that's, I think, probably a little bit more famous than this incursion right here. So they had a little bit different style of government than the Romans. Again, the Romans left several cities and forts that were used. They were used by the Anglo-Saxons. They'd later be used by Vikings once they came in, different Viking groups, to establish control. These fortifications are really good for protecting your people and holding your interest if you can maintain it. So you have these different tribes, different clans, peoples that take over different areas of England. They're led by war chiefs, what we would call war chiefs. It's not a perfect translation, but a lot of these powerful chiefs could actually earn the title of Senin, which is the Anglo-Saxon word for king. And they implemented something called a weregild that was used for a good while in Britain, and it was to prevent blood feuds. So what would happen is, let's say you had a family member that killed someone else's family member. Your guilty party member, your family, would be required to pay the other family damages for the lost person. Because Germanic tribes and even some Viking tribes had this idea that if one of your family attacks my family, even if they don't kill them, my job is to attack you back. And so to try to prevent these ongoing blood feuds that led to losses of life, farmers could disrupt production of goods. They're like, okay, let's make the family be financially responsible for that crime. So that's the Were Guild. So I know this map isn't the best, but it shows more or less how the different Anglo-Saxon peoples controlled different areas of what is today England. By 680, there are 5 important major kingdoms. There's some smaller ones in here, but 5 really big ones. If there is a smaller kingdom in between here, they are beholden to one of these other bigger kingdoms. So the most northern one right here is Northumbria. And this is the section today that's just south of what we know as Scotland. Up here, north of it, if you study in English history, you're going to have things like Hadrian's Wall, which section of it still exists today. And then you have Mercia. So you can kind of see Chester over here. Anything with that Chester is a Roman fortification city that you see left over naming today. You have East Anglia right here. Then you're going to have Wessex and Kent. I know you can see Essex and Sussex, but they were subservient to one of the other kingdoms here. Wales is an independent kingdom. So the Anglo-Saxons also have some pretty cool art. They were really good metal and jewelry workers. We have quite a bit. Places like the British Museum, have examples of this. This is an ornamental helmet. I don't know if it would have been used actually in warfare or not. It's kind of hard to see. You can Google image all of these from the British Museum, and if you get a better look right here, these are actually ornate boars that were carved into the helmet. This right here is actually a purse, and I forget what this piece of jewelry is. So we always have some sort of hands-on activity, right? Obviously, I'm not a metal worker. I can't do jewelry either. So illuminated manuscripts are another form of art that Anglo-Saxon peoples did very well. Now, it wasn't many of them. Most people at this time couldn't read and write in England. They're not the only culture to practice this art form. You have cultures out of Russia, what's today Russia. You have Middle Eastern cultures, other Asian cultures. So this is not unique to the Anglo-Saxon time period or culture, but you can kind of tell by the how they draw people, what they chose to draw on these, and how they illuminated their manuscript. Most of these examples come out of churches because those are the big centers of learning at the time. So a lot of these texts out of this region are going to be religious in nature, but not all of them. The Irish, I think it's Irish Book of Kells, is an example. Even though it was housed in monasteries and saved for the most part, it's not a religious text as we think of it. So that's what we're going to make today. We're going to make our own version of an illuminated manuscript. So you can pick any book you like, whatever your favorite book is. Pick a small section is what I recommend. And we're going to copy the words down and try our best to do something like this. But it can look however you want it to look. So I'm going to move over to my project. I kind of already started it, get a head start, and I can show you how it's going so far. So I'll meet you over there. So this is the version of an illuminated manuscript that I've started already. I'm going to finish this with y'all. I just took a section of Beowulf. Beowulf is the oldest written example of Old English we have currently. And for those of you who are unaware, English language is considered Germanic because of its structure, meaning it's related to other Germanic languages. But obviously, I would argue that most of us watching today can't actually speak German. But if you listen to Old English, there are people who know how to speak it, they've studied it. You can YouTube some examples. You can hear the Germanic influence there. So when I say Old English, if you pick up the untranslated copy of Beowulf in Old English, more likely you're not going to be able to read it. It looks completely different. It is completely separate language. So awesome people throughout history have figured out how to translate it, and so we have a lot of versions translated that you and I can read. I recommend if you go read it, try to find one that has the Old English on this side and the translation on this side so you can see how different they are. It's pretty cool. So that's all I did. Like I said, I took the first few lines from Beowulf, and I'm going to sit here and illuminate them. So one of the things illuminated manuscripts are known for is having that gold leaf ink used in them to make them very colorful and bright. You can use whatever colors you want when you illuminate yours. You don't have to use, I have some gold markers and stuff here to help me out, but you can use whatever colors you want to make this work for you. So I started with the pencil to kind of work everything out, because I know if I committed with pen or marker or whatever, that I would inevitably mess up. So that's why I'm using pencil. You don't have to. It just makes me feel better to kind of have a sketch to work off of. I've seen some manuscripts that actually make all their letters open to be colored in, and they just leave the first one, one that's like this with designs in it. I'm just tracing what I've written, and I'm going to go back and get rid of my pencil marks once I'm done. The important thing when you do this is to make sure you write pretty large and clearly, because even though it's decorated, it was still designed for people, the ones who could read, to be able to read it. So I have most of my text done, and I'm gonna work on filling in the flashier parts of this. I have decided to use markers, but use whatever you're happy with. You could even use paint if your adult says that's okay. Alright, and this is my illuminated manuscript. Obviously, I'm not as talented as some of the examples we saw, but you can do whatever you would like to do with yours. I'm going to give you another look here at a different angle. So I hope you all enjoyed that one. I know I did. I encourage you to look more into Anglo-Saxon medieval history in England. That's definitely not the whole story. The story gets a lot more complicated and tense once the Viking invaders make their way over to England. So the story gets a lot more interesting then. So if you made this along with us, and I hope you did, please share it with us on Instagram or on our Facebook page, provided your adult is okay with that. If you have any suggestions, let us comment below on that Facebook page, or contact the library, and it will get to me, and I will see you guys next time I do a homeschool history. Have a great day. Bye.